How's it going, viewer? Super Sam 657 here, and I am here to see the brand new Star Wars movie, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. I'm very excited for this movie. It is the first of a line of anthology films, which basically means that it's kind of a side story to the main story, so it's not really episode 8, but it's gonna be just as much fun anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and head in and see it for myself, and I'll be back later with a review. Alright, so before I actually get into the thick of the movie, I'd just like to remind you guys, as always, this is the non-spoiler review. If you've already seen the movie, or you just want to see how I felt about each individual scene, go ahead and click the annotation on the screen or the link in the description to bring you to the spoiler review. However, word of warning though, obviously if you go to the spoiler review, you're going to see quite a lot of spoilers for the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, I highly recommend you stay right here. Alright, so if you're still here, that means you are ready for the spoiler review. The non-spoiler review, sorry, whoa, that could have been very bad. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. So, right away, what I noticed about this movie, as opposed to really any other Star Wars movie, is that it follows a very different tone and a very different pace from anything else. And that's kind of designed to make you feel like this is not part of the main series. This is a bit of a spin-off. This is something that is put to the side that, you know, it ultimately made the main series happen. And I really liked that. And anyone who's a fan of the original trilogy, you're going to love that as well, because that's pretty much what this movie all has to do with. So if you are an original trilogy fan, even more specifically an episode 4 fan, you're going to absolutely love this movie. Even if you are like an extended universe fan or even just a prequels fan, you're probably still going to like this. And then my personal favorite aspect in that kind of regard about this movie was the effects and the styling of it, which is actually fairly reminiscent from episode 7. However, they actually had some things that were pretty different. And I honestly liked better than what they did in episode 7. And I'm not really going to get into what specifically, but some things I felt like they did a little bit better than in episode 7. Some things I'd say is just on par. So overall, great effects. And anyone who saw my episode 7 review, which you can find on my channel, or I'll post a link in the description. I said, I really liked all the characters, I liked all these different aspects of it, and the characters for me in this movie, each one of them had some aspect that I really liked. Some piece of their history, some piece of just their personality, something that I felt like really contributed to the story, and really made me like each one of them. And I honestly can't really remember all their names, and some of them I do remember their names, I just can't even pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try. So I'm just going to generalize it by saying that all characters in some regard had something that I liked. And most likely you may or may not find that, but I would say that they cover a lot of, enough different things that just by watching the movie you can probably pick out something from at least one of the characters that you like, because they just had this really nice mesh. Everyone was a little bit different, and I thought that was actually really cool. Another thing that is very different from any other Star Wars movie is the fact that in this movie the Force is less of a power and more of a kind of religious aspect, which honestly I thought that was one of the highlights of the movie for me, because the Force is something that feels like sometimes could be a little bit of a cop-out move for the writers, and ultimately it could add some really awesome things to the effects or to just the fight scenes or anything like that. However, it was interesting to see in this application. It's something that we've never really seen before on the big screen, and they portrayed it really, really well. And that being said, for a movie that used very little, Force scenes in it, very little, I mean, I can really only think of two actual shots in the movie that had it. Um, the fight scenes were actually very well done. Because typically in a Star Wars movie, some of the best fight scenes are between two Force users. That's not always the case, but it often is. A noteworthy one in my mind is Anakin versus Obi-Wan from Episode 3. It's honestly one of my favorite fight scenes from any Star Wars movie. And they were both Force sensitive, and they both used that power to kind of gain the advantage over each other. And in this movie, you do see some very intense battle scenes, but no one's really using the Force. And they're just using their own natural abilities. And I thought that was actually really nice to see that there are these people in the galaxy that have this quality within them that they can basically contend in the same kind of way. Which added this really nice, real aspect to the movie. Something that I think is easier to grab than the concept of the Force, which I really liked. And I'd actually really like to see more of that in the future. And I kind of have a feeling, and I kind of really hope that the anthology films really start running with that. That there are these people that use the Force in the galaxy. There's people who use an immense amount of it, a very powerful amount of it. Yet at the same time, you also have heroes who do such amazing things in their own way. They're the same caliber, and they don't use any concept of the Force. They might refer to it, they might believe in it, but ultimately they require their own individual strengths to get through every battle. And it's just a very, very cool theme to have for a Star Wars movie. But then just as far as the plot of the movie goes, obviously this is supposed to be a kind of a prequel to Episode 4. It takes place in between Episode 3 and 4. More specifically, I would say this movie is more like Episode 3.9, as it happens right before Episode 4. In fact, after seeing this movie, I almost want to go back and rewatch Episode 4 just to see how well they stitched the final scene of Rogue One with the first scene of Episode 4, because, just at least from memory, it was actually really well stitched. They did a very good job with that. And actually, I was talking about this with someone before I started recording this, that they brought. I'll elaborate this a little bit more in the spoiler review, but they brought some things back from the original that seemed like on the outside, oh well, they're just using CGI to fill this in, because obviously this is something that happened 30 years ago. And I kind of looked at it, and I remember reading it wasn't CGI. That was actually just really good makeup, really good just effect work, and it shows. It actually looks like it could be the quality of very good CGI, but it looks tangible and it looks real, just because it actually is. And that's something that I also said in my last, my review of Episode 7, that I love that kind of aspect, that everything now in Star Wars movies, they are practical unless it's something that can't be practically done. And I think that is the perfect blend. And coming from the original trilogy, where pretty much everything's practical because they didn't have the option to do anything computer generated, although of course it's the remastered. But and then you have the prequels, where it's the exact opposite of that, where pretty much the entire movie is a cartoon. And I'm not really going to go into whether I like the original trilogy or the prequels better, but I'm just going to say that I don't think the extreme of either is really the best way to go when making a movie. Obviously, if you only have the budget to do small practical effects, you got to stick with that. However, if budget isn't really an option, I actually really prefer to see a movie that has everything that feels very real, that feels like you can reach out and grab it, but then ultimately has this really fantastic element to it that is something that is beyond something that you can just reach out and grab. And it's portrayed very well nowadays in Star Wars movies. They set that standard in Episode 7, and they continued with that in Rogue One. And I'm very, very happy that they did that. There were some very nice cameo appearances from some characters that I heard some rumors they were going to be in there, but I didn't really hear anything definitively. And it was really nice to just see them really kind of just put the characters in there. I'm not going to say who it was, but there's four characters come to mind. Actually, five that I heard were going to be in the movie, but I hadn't seen anything with my own eyes about it before seeing the movie because they really hid that, and it worked. It worked very nicely, and it was actually something that a little bit of a pleasant surprise each time I saw one of these characters that I was like, oh, so they are in the movie. That's nice. Oh, yeah. So as far as keeping with the canon of just the lore around Star Wars, this is a really awesome bridge movie. That's really what it was. It was a bridge movie more than really anything. But it was a movie good enough that you could watch it on its own. I mean, it honestly could be the first Star Wars movie you watch, and you'd probably still get some level of enjoyment out of it. There are probably going to be some things that you're a little bit more confused about, but it's still good in its own way. That being said, if you watch this after knowing everything from the Star Wars movies and TV shows and everything, um, watching this just feels like fulfillment of the just the universe of Star Wars. It feels like everything that you've been thinking uh, would happen in the events that led up to all of this um, could happen, and it really just fills that need for knowledge. It honestly it's a perfect film in that regard. There are some things that obviously it's very hard to make a absolutely perfect movie. Some aspects of it I felt like were almost too overdone. Maybe that was just because the theater I was watching it in, the screen was an extra large screen with extra high quality speakers, but just some of it just felt almost like too imposing on the audience. But nevertheless, it was still very impressive, still very neat to see. Um, and I actually saw it in 3D just because I ended up doing that. And honestly, this is a movie where you can absolutely skip 3D. And this is something I talked about in my Doctor Strange review, where in that movie, the 3D was a constructive part of the movie. Because for that, if you're watching it in 3D, you'll really see parts of the screen move and shift and kind of displace themselves, and it really works for a movie like Doctor Strange. And in that video, I also talked about how Episode 7 used a couple of small pieces where they kind of overlapped some objects on the screen, which was kind of nice to see. Unfortunately, Rogue One did not have any of that. And it honestly felt like the 3D was a bit of a waste. That the 3D glasses were more just hindering on me watching it. So if you're considering watching in 3D, I would say don't really waste your time. You can watch it in 2D. You're going to get just the same amount of enjoyment, or even more enjoyment than watching it in 3D. There's really nothing you're going to gain out of it. Otherwise, this is a fairly friendly movie, at least as far as any Star Wars movie has gone. It pretty much keeps on the same level of PG-ness, PG-13-ness with everything else. There are some, like I said, there are some slightly more imposing scenes, but otherwise nothing's too bad. And I guess I'll just finish off this non-spoiler review by saying that if you are a fan of Star Wars, if you are a fan of just the original trilogy, any of that, you have to go see this movie. It is pretty much a requirement for you. What are you doing? Get off this video, go out and go see the movie. No, I'm just kidding. You can stay on this video. You don't have to go leave right now. But anyway, that's about it for this video. If you liked it, feel free to leave the like. If you like me, feel free to subscribe. That's about it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.